And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of New York State of Sports on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all of the sports, episode 85. Hey, here with you. We've got another great week in New York sports. The final day of March as baseball kicks into full swing. We'll talk, of course, NFL draft coming up, but the Yankees torpedoed their way to a sweep of the Milwaukee Brewers. Dominant, new bats, new home runs, great weekend out in the Bronx. Mets, they lose 2 out of 3 to Houston, but overall not discouraging signs, but the offense needs to wake up a little bit besides Juan Soto. The Giants have another new quarterback, but Russell Wilson joins the fold. What does that mean? The third pick in the draft coming up in just a few weeks. We're driving it out. Jalen Brunson is back. He's progressing to a return with the Knicks. Knicks starting to play some good basketball with this and possible round one opponents for them. St. John's gets a little bit of news. They had a player in the transfer from Arizona State, and R.J. Lewis Jr. not only declares for the draft, or wants to discuss the draft, but declares for the transfer portal. What does that all mean? We'll talk about that for the Red Storm. We'll talk the Rangers and Islanders and their quest trying to get into the playoffs. Rangers are still there despite a rough West Coast trip. Islanders, well, they're fading pretty quickly as we're both be watching Montreal. We'll talk Liberty. We'll talk soccer. We'll talk all things New York sports coming up next year on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all sports. We will see you in just a minute. Stay here. We'll be right back. Of course, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Episode 85 of New York State of Sports, IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all of the sports. It felt like the Yankees were hitting 85 home runs, but we'll dive into that in just a little bit. We got to, of course, feel free to join the chat here on YouTube with your thoughts, comments, questions. You can email me, rickjkeeler@gmail.com as well. Brian from the Beantown Sports Pound is here. Welcome, Brian. Rough week for Boston out in Texas, but overall, I think some decent stuff from the Red Sox. Christian Campbell doing some good things. And Taryn Rodriguez, of course, is always here. Thank you very much, Taryn, for chiming in. Of course, I want to remind you that you can follow us on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube at IE Sports Radio. All of our shows are on there. We do shows every day, different regions, different sports. Be sure to check those out. Each one has its own pages. IESportsRadio.com/New York State of Sports is the place to go for at least learning more about me and the show. If you missed any portion of this episode or you just want to hear me talk again, download the podcast on Apple, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, anywhere you get your podcast. Chances are that is where you will find it. You can follow me on X at RickNader555. That's at RICK, letter I, Nader, like a Terminator, and 3 5s. Or you can follow the show at NY State Sports IE. I will also tweet from there as well. And of course, remind you about the Supporters Club. Each show has one for $5 a month. You can maybe get you to be a guest on the show. We can do a show exclusively about your favorite New York team, your favorite New York player. So much perks you can get for the Supporters Club, and you become part of this family. And IE Sports Radio, I believe, is one of the better families out there. So thank you for your support of the show. Again, we're 85 episodes deep. We're getting close to that 100 mark. So everybody who tunes in this each and every week, I greatly do appreciate you taking some time out of your Monday afternoon. So we'll take a little bit of a break, hear from some of our awesome sponsors. We'll come back and talk the first week of the season in baseball. The Yankees make a statement against the Brewers. The Mets, like I said, lose 2 out of 3. But I think overall, some decent things about the Mets to take away from a tough series in Houston. You're listening to New York State of Sports, IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all the sports. We'll be right back after this.
IE Sports Radio fans, This show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, Single A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
Rise and shine. It's 4 a.m. The stars are still out. The sun is beneath the horizon, but it's time to punch in and go to work. The comfort of your warm-ups turns into the grinding out of your reps as the clinking and the clanking of the plates create a symphony of euphoria. There's no other feeling like it. Earn it, burn it, and take what's yours. IE Sports Radio has proudly partnered with Vital Apparel, a brand that not only fits great, but also promotes and donates to mental health research. Use our code IESR to get 15% off their comfortable and inspiring gym wear and help them on their amazing journey to support mental health. Go hard, take part in your iron therapy, and be strong. Because when your mental health is as strong as you are, there's no telling how far you'll go.
Hey there, IE Sports Radio fans. Be sure to check out our sponsor, Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitations and you're looking for that extra special touch? Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or a friend and you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps for your invitations, letters, and gifts. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. You can find them on Instagram at sealthedeal_wax stamps and on Facebook, Seal the Deal Wax Seals.
For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the IE Sports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
Welcome back to New York State of Sports and Sports Radio, your direct feed for all the sports. Ricky K here with you. Thank you to our awesome sponsors, Planet Jerky, Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, getting some awesome jerky for your nightly baseball watching, the Final Four coming up this weekend, the Masters next week. So many sports I've into, so have some jerky while you're watching some of those events. Of course, Vital Apparel, great cause for mental health awareness. So get your awesome gym wear today. Seal the Deal wax seals for those weddings and special events. And Sports Radio, as you mentioned, shows for every sport, every region. We have a great community here of awesome hosts. Be sure to check all of them out. Also want to shout out our newest sponsor, Raw Nutrition Supplements. If you go to getrawnutrition.com, use the promo code IESR, and you get 10% off of your purchase. Be sure to take advantage of that today. And you thank Raw Nutrition Supplements for their support. So let's talk baseball. Glad it's back. The weather was actually beautiful in the Bronx, at least Saturday. It was almost 85 degrees at first pitch, which is giving you summer vibes, although we've had a little bit of rain in the area. But the Yankees make a statement against the Brewers. And before people start dismissing, well, it's the Brewers, let's remember this was a team that won the NL Central last year. It's a team that always seems to be in postseason contention, even though they're in one of the weaker divisions in baseball. And the Yankees went in there, and as Jazz Chisholm Jr. told Meredith Marakovitz after Sunday's game, they made a statement. Reigning American League champions, people a little bit down on them going into the season with the injury to Garrett Cole being out for the year, the injury to Giancarlo Stanton, who at least is now swinging a bat, which is a very good sign for him, at least in trying to get back as soon as he can. But the Yankees' offense was absolutely dominant in this series, and there's no bones about it. 36 runs in 3 games. That's franchise record. 15 home runs. The last team to do that was the 2006 Detroit Tigers. Hitting 9 home runs on Saturday. They're the third team in baseball history to have at least 9 home runs in the game. In fact, Aaron Boone's Reds were the last team to do it in 1999. They just continue to make dominant performances with the bat. And it really was looking at Saturday's game, particularly, as you said, with the 9 home runs. They hit home runs on the first 3 pitches of the game from Paul Goldschmidt, Cody Bellinger, Aaron Judge, who looks locked in as ever. We'll get into that in a bit. Austin Wells had a couple home runs this week. Jazz Chisholm had 3 home runs this week. Anthony Volpe had 2. You saw Oswald Peraza get involved, the pinch hit home run the other day. They're getting production everywhere in the lineup right now. Ben Rice went deep yesterday. This is a team right now that the lineup looks a lot more well-rounded. And Milwaukee at least has 2 good pitchers, Freddie Peralta, who pitched very well on opening day. Cortez, who you kind of in some way, shape, or form feel bad about him struggling because Nestor was a fan favorite in the Bronx, and I think he's going to do well for the Brewers at some point. I did not like that he didn't talk to the media after the game. I mean, where are you going? Are you going back to the hotel? It would be one thing if the game was in Milwaukee and you want to just get out for the day. That wasn't a good look for Nestor, although he did get a nice tribute from the Yankees the next day. But they were dominant in the series from all levels. And to me, it shows how well-rounded this team can be. And it starts really in the leadoff spot. You saw Austin Wells hit leadoff on opening day. Kind of got a hint was going to happen when Boone was introducing it in the spring. Wells goes out there, hits a home run the first at bat for the Yankees on the season. I mean, that's the power he has. Anthony Volpe gets involved with a home run in the second. Yankees really don't get a lot of offense going after that, but they find a way to scratch and claw to a 4-2 win. It was really Saturday and Sunday where they did the bulk of the damage, including a 12-3 win yesterday. And everyone's talking about the torpedo bat as really a statement from this weekend. And I got a lot of texts from people, especially people who aren't Yankee fans, saying the baseball's letting the Yankees do whatever they want. You got to understand something. We're going to get into the whole stuff with the torpedo bats. And it came across early a couple years ago. Now, the Yankees used to employ someone named Aaron Lenhart, who now is working with the Marlins. He was an MIT professor at Michigan and wanted to pursue an athletic career. And he's been working with players kind of to figure out something to do to help with the bat and increase the barrel. So they end up elongating the barrel of the bat. And what that does is it kind of gives a weight distribution where you get more weight onto the barrel. The bat still is the same. MLB came out even on Sunday and kind of said what the Yankees are doing with the bat is legal. We've seen other players use it. Ryan Jeffers from the Twins was using it yesterday. And we've come a long way with technology in baseball. It's kind of like, okay, like they were talking about it on Yes the other day. It's kind of like golf. We cater golf clubs to the individual golfer. So with Major League Baseball, why aren't we having bats that are catered to the player themselves? Maybe a player like they're talking about Anthony Volpe. I was reading from Brian Hoke wants more of the weight on the label because Volpe hits more on the label of the bat. So why can't you make that happen? I mean, we're in an era where the technology was so catered to the pitcher over recent years that the hitters had kind of gone behind in a sense. Now you're at least getting it where the player feels, hey, we can now have a shot. And this isn't the Yankees making the bats. They're going to the bat manufacturer who makes the bat. So almost like if the Yankees have this underground system where they make bats for players. No, they don't. And it was so weak to me. Brewers closer Trevor McGill, who barely got in this series, he only got in because they needed to get him some work, said it was like slow pitch softball, and it was the Yankees, so they could do whatever they want, and baseball wasn't going to get away. First off, Trevor McGill needs to shut up because his team did not look good in this series. And if you're a Brewers fan, you're probably upset. Jackson Chourio had 5 strikeouts opening day. They couldn't get really any starting pitching outside of Peralta. Savali was terrible, and I mentioned Cortez was terrible. Savali actually is now in the IL with a hamstring injury, so they have more injuries with their pitching staff. And in some ways, it could hurt players. I mean, Giancarlo Stanton used a torpedo bat, and a lot of people think a lot of Stanton's elbow issues are from the bat change. So it's the torpedo bat works for some players. It doesn't really work for anybody else. It doesn't have to work for everybody else. Like, this isn't PEDs for bats, okay? Are the Yankees going to score 15 runs a game? No. I don't think that in the slightest. But can this offense put up a good amount of offensive run support on a nightly basis? You can clearly see in the camp. We saw Trent Grisham get some at-bats, and Trent Grisham looked better than he did last year. Again, it's early. We've only played 3 games. So you try not to come up with the Yankees are going to win the pennant again and make these rash assumptions out of the gate. You don't, to me, my rule of thumb in baseball is you don't really make blanket statements until at least Memorial Day. That's really the first unofficial checkpoint of the season. But the Yankees passed their first initial test. And I mentioned Aaron Judge, who last year everybody wondered in April if something was wrong with him. You go now as we head into April 1st, first series of the season. He hits 4 home runs. He had 8 RBIs on Saturday. He looked locked in. He was close to a 4th home run a couple of times. But bat in the 6th inning Saturday, ball gets to the wall in right field, and he's facing his former teammate Jake Bowers. In the 8th inning, hits the ball to left field. It doesn't quite get enough of the bat on it and flew out. Then he comes back in the 1st inning Sunday and hits a home run. I mean, right now he looks completely locked in the plate. Great plate discipline. He had a few walks yesterday. I mean, he's the difference making this lineup. And I love the fact that Boone's hitting him 3rd. You saw with Goldschmidt batting leadoff, and Goldschmidt kills the Brewers, so it's no surprise he was doing well. But Cody Bellinger had a nice series batting 2nd. Didn't really have the huge hits outside of the home run Saturday, but he drove it an RBI every game. He's putting good at-bats together, getting good swings. You love seeing that. And if Goldschmidt and Bellinger can both get on, guess what? You got a chance for Judge to get 2 or 3 runs out of the gate in the 1st inning. And that's ultimately what you're looking for. So regardless of Judge hits 2nd or Judge hits 3rd, it's still the fact that the Yankees giving him an opportunity to drive in runs in the 1st inning. You don't want him to hit leadoff, hit a solo home run, and while 1-0 is nice, it's not 2-0, 3-0 what that can do. So overall, Yankees offense, I thought, did a really good job in this series. Defense, not so much. And what gets lost in Saturday's game is the fact they made 5 errors. Like, you don't even talk about 5 errors when you score 20 runs and all those things. But Pablo Reyes was awful at 3rd base. Max Fried made a fielding error in the 2nd inning that cost him a few pitches. And it's kind of embarrassing to Fried, and at least he owned up to it after the game that he didn't pitch well, that your team scores 20 runs and you don't get a win. Max Fried did in the last 5 innings. Now, he was fighting didn't have his A stuff. You get that. He showed some good things, and I wouldn't go start panicking about Max Fried. It's just something I'm sure he would have rather wanted to walk away from with a win, and that did not happen. Same thing happened with not so much with Marcus Stroman yesterday. There was a ball in the 5th inning. I think Stroman wished Jason Dominguez and left it dove for with 2 outs and nobody on, so he could try to get a win, because as we pointed out throughout the weekend, while wins are not the end-all be-all for pitchers anymore, pitchers want those wins. And when you come that close, especially Fried's case, and your team's up by 10 runs, you should be getting wins. So that hurt for him in a little bit. I think, though, he'll be fine. What was impressive on the pitching side to me was Carlos Rodon. He looked excellent on opening day, and he needed to start like that just to get the people off his back a little bit. Rodon's kind of a player that people think hasn't lived up to the expectations. There are times he has, and there are times he's not. You look at opening day, didn't really use the fastball that much, but 5 1/3, 1 run, 4 hits. He walked 2. Struck out 7 on 89 pitches, 58 strikes. The stuff was excellent in my mind, and really got himself out of some key jams in this game. Brewers themselves, as the team, were 1 for 6 with men in scoring position. Outside, if they could contain Yelich and Contreras, which they did, a combined 0 for 8. Really, the only Brewer hitter that hurt them in the series was Sal Frelick. Just an excellent job by Rodon. If you keep that going, he'll be fine. Bullpen looked good. Outside of the shaky performance by Devin Williams on opening day, and you get it, you're facing your former team in your first game. Things could go wrong. Williams had erratic command, needed 35 pitches, just 36 pitches just to finish the game. But he got himself out of it, struck out Christian Yelich at the end, and at least gets his first save. The Yankees didn't have to use Williams or Weaver outside of Thursday, which is a good thing, but you saw Mark Leiter showed some good stuff. 2 strikeouts Thursday, looked good yesterday. Tim Hill came in for Stroman yesterday, had a good performance. Was able to get out of the 6th inning for Rodon on opening day. So good stuff from Hill. I remember this Yankee bullpen's only going to get better when you consider Jake Cousins isn't here right now. Ian Hamilton isn't here right now. Jonathan Loaisiga isn't here right now. They're getting good production out of their bullpen, and that's going to be really a strength of this team going forward. The Yankees will be off today. They're back home tomorrow. They'll take on the Arizona Diamondbacks. Diamondbacks split with the Cubs in their first 4 games. So Alden Kay, my co-host on Bullpen Bolton and the AZ Sports Zone, I'm sure he'll be watching this series intently in the Bronx, and some really good pitching matchups, because to me, this is a test for the Yankees. Their first, another big one, because Arizona's a team that hovered around the playoffs last year. They got to the World Series 2 years ago, and they're going to face their top 3 starters, which I joked with Alden after the fact. They said, of course, the Diamondbacks are going to wait to unveil their prized offseason acquisition on the road and not pitch them at all in the opening series of the year. So your pitching matchups Tuesday, Corbin Burns against Will Warren. That's going to be a good test for Warren. Remember last year we saw Luis Gil face some of the tough competition early and was able to excel. I'm not expecting Will Warren to beat Corbin Burns, but I would love for him to at least keep the Yankees in the game, have some strong pitching. Maybe the Yankees get a couple key home runs in this one. Wednesday's going to be fun. Zach Gallen, who lost on opening day for Arizona against Rodon. And then Thursday, Merrill Kelly goes up against Carlos Carrasco. Carrasco got into Saturday's game just to get a little bit of work in before his first start. So again, really interesting test for the Yankees. Then they will go to Pittsburgh to take on the Pittsburgh Pirates. Maybe we'll see Paul Skeens in this series. Pirates got walked off 3 times by the Marlins this week. So not exactly a good thing for Ralph in the injury report. The Pirates did not really excel in their bullpen. I think it's going to be something to watch, especially in the later game innings for the Yankees, to see what they do. We'll get to the Mets coming up, but as Brian says, much of the Red Sox fan, the league is best and both teams are good. I think Sox fans get carried away. And then Ralph hanging out in the dentist chair watching this game. Hopefully the dentist is kind to you, good sir. So let's talk Mets, who end up losing 2 out of 3 to the Houston Astros, did not play yesterday. And I think the story for the Mets this weekend was the lack of offense. They scored 5 runs in 3 games. Now, Juan Soto did his thing. Has the only hit for the Mets Saturday in a game where Spencer Arrighetti just dominated them. And then homered on Friday off Hunter Brown. So Soto was able to be a key contributor. Of course, everyone's going to point out the opening day performance where he struck out against Josh Hader after being ahead 3-0 in the count. But Soto also had a base hit and a couple of walks that game. And I think as patient as Juan Soto is, I'm sure at that moment he had a little bit of impatience in him and kind of wanted to excel in the moment, which we're so used to watching Juan Soto do. I had Met fans joking with me that Juan Soto should give $1 million for every time he doesn't come through in the clutch. But he is going to have his moments. Nobody should doubt that. And to me, all things considering, a good week for him, at least showing what he can do. I think everyone's going to love what he does, especially when he comes home on Friday against the Blue Jays. Maybe he has some moments at Citi Field, and everyone's going to love what he's able to do. The rest of the offense, not so good. And you had a couple players that I thought did their thing to an extent. Mark Vientos had a big double on Friday. That was a big thing for him. But really, outside of that, you're looking for other things to happen, and they just were not there. If you go off just the fact at a hits perspective, the only 3 players to have multiple hits so far this year are Soto, he had 3, Brandon Nimmo had 2, and Luis Torrens had 2. Francisco Lindor, and by the way, congratulations to his family, birth of a new child. But he didn't play well. And I think at some point we're waiting for Francisco Lindor to actually have a great first month for once. That has not happened so far. I mean, the only RBIs that the Mets got, as I mentioned, Soto 2, Lindor did have a run batted in, Jesse Winker, and Vientos. P. Alonso, not a good week. And I think the Mets, they're going to be fine from an offensive perspective, but just a rough week for them. And I think people expected more from this team, at least early, from an offensive side. Bullpen, I thought was really good. I thought when you looked at the Mets, the key with them is going to be their starting rotation. We'll get into that. But overall, their bullpen did a really nice job on the surface. Like, you go to Thursday, Clay Holmes, and we'll get into him a little bit later. But Brazoban, 2 1/3 scoreless. Danny Young, an inning scoreless. Kept the team in the game at 3-0. You go to Friday, Tyler McGill gives them a solid outing. And then Reed Garrett, a scoreless 6 with 2 strikeouts. A.J. Minter, a scoreless Mets debut. Ryan Stanek, a scoreless 8th. And Edwin Diaz, 12 of 15 pitches for strikes in the 9th inning. Did his thing there. And then Saturday, even though the Mets lost that close 1-run game 2-1, bullpen kept them in it too. Jose Butto gets 5 outs. Wiggles his way out of trouble. 2 walks and 2 strikeouts. And Max Kranick got the last 2 outs of the 8th inning. Look, this is a mid bullpen that doesn't have elite names in it. Minter, I thought, was their big acquisition, but Butto, we know, can do some stuff. Kranick is the player they loved in spring training. And Reed Garrett, if he has another strong season. Stanek, of course, they brought back. They have production there. And I think the other good signs was the back end of the rotation. The Mets didn't throw their top starters in this series, as we talked about last week. Why, I don't know. Maybe it was because they wanted Kodai Senga to get some extra rest. Still don't know why I didn't see David Peterson in this series, but nevertheless, Griffin Canning gave up a home run to Jeremy Pena. But outside of that, if you told me you get 5 2/3, 2 runs, 4 hits, 2 walks, and 4 strikeouts in your opening game, I'd take it. You go to Friday, Tyler McGill, who usually pitches opening days, it seems, for the Mets, but he got the second start. 1 run, 3 hits, a walk, struck out 6. The only run McGill gives up in the game is a sac fly to Yordan Alvarez in the 4th. This is a different Astro team, but considering the Astros still have Alvarez, still have Altuve, still have good pieces in that lineup, and you get good performances from your back-end starters, you take that. At the same time, kind of want to pump the brakes on Clay Holmes a little bit. That's not to say he can't be good as a starter, because I believe he can be. But you look at Clay Holmes on the surface, he struggled with command, did get through 4 2/3, 2 earned runs, 5 hits, 4 walks, 4 strikeouts, 89 pitches, 53 strikes. Mets did have an error in this game from Luis Angel Acuna. who's been rotating, platooning with second base with Brett Beatty. So they're going to see some warts, at least from those guys, especially Beatty learning second base. Wouldn't be surprised if that happened. But overall, again, good thing from the Mets. Now, they will head to Miami to play the Marlins, who were the team that got the 3 walk-off wins against Pittsburgh. That'll happen this week. Tonight, it is David Peterson against Cal Quantrill, one of the lone new moves the Marlins actually made this winter. Tuesday should be fun. Kodai Senga against Sandy Alcantara. And then on Wednesday, Clay Holmes against Gillespie for Miami. And the Mets will head home to play the Blue Jays. Blue Jays, normally you would expect Max Scherzer to pitch, but Scherzer got hurt in his first start with Toronto, is on the injured list. So unfortunately, the Mets will not get a reunion against Scherzer. But Toronto is a team, I think, that made some moves this winter. Love the Santander acquisition. But should be a good week for the Mets. I mean, let's see what Peterson does. Let's see what Senga does. Let's see if the offense can break out. But again, people are going to react. They lost the first series of the season. But again, you get a couple hits here or there, completely changes the outcome. So I wouldn't panic if I'm a Mets fan after 3 games. Ralph says Yankees will sweep the Pirates. They miss Skeens. Yeah, but you still got Mitch Keller. The pitching wasn't really the issue for Pittsburgh in the first series of the season. To me, it's just about, I think you can go on the road. You just want to win a series, and we'll see if the Yankees can do that. A lot of interleague series, by the way. I think 4 of their first 5 series are National League opponents because they'll play the Tigers when we come back next week on the road, but then head home to play the Giants. So Yankees get a lot of National League opponents out of the gate to begin the season. So take a quick timeout. We'll come back. We'll talk some football. Russell Wilson is with the New York Giants. What does it mean for the number 3 pick of the draft? What does it mean for the Giants' 2025 outlook? We'll talk about that coming up next. You're listening to New York State Sports and IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all this sports. We'll be right back after this.
What's up, Pittsburgh? This is Ralph Galise, the host of the Injury Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Are you that passionate diehard Steelers, Penguins, Pirates, or just a Pittsburgh sports fan? Then please join me on the Injury Report every Tuesday on IE Sports Radio, the direct feed for all that is sports. And I will update you on all that's black and gold, have you telling your Pittsburgh fans and friends what's up with Pittsburgh sports. Tune in Tuesday with me, Ralph Galise, the User Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Let's go!
Everybody, this is Darren Rodriguez. Are you a fan of volleyball? Are you a fan of Thunder Spikes? Then I have the show for you, Set Point, where I cover NCAA men's and women's volleyball, high school boys and girls volleyball, beach volleyball, and even professional volleyball. Catch the action every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Welcome back to New York State Sports and IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Ricky K with you for episode 85 as we switch over from the diamond to the gridiron. We're about less than a month away from the NFL draft. Normally, you don't see a lot of huge news happen between now and the draft. It's signing related because the big free agents are off the board. But the Giants, make an interesting move early last week, about a day after we got off the air for our last episode. They bring in Russell Wilson, 1-year deal, $10 million, could make, I think it was up to $20 million with incentives. And this move was not surprising. The Giants, brought in Russell Wilson last year for a meeting, did not get it done. So when you knew they were bringing him back for a meeting again, that was going to be the player they got. They weren't going to wait on Aaron Rodgers, nor should they. It sounds like Aaron Rodgers right now is between Pittsburgh, Minnesota, or just retiring. I don't see where else Aaron Rodgers is going to go. And the Giants and Joe Shane in that front office, I don't think can afford to wait for quarterbacks because they would have had egg on their face if they ended up with nothing. So they get Russell Wilson. And what I love with Russell Wilson from his press conference was it seemed like he did a lot of research on this team, talking about what he can do with Malik Neighbors, talking about wanting to be a leader on this team right out of the gate. That's what the Giants need. They need leadership. Now, you can talk about Russell Wilson all you want, and last year with the Steelers, he got off to a really good start, faded down the stretch. Look at his numbers last year, almost 2,500 yards passing, 16 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, only averaged 7 yards of completion. He's going to be interested to see what he does with the lack of weapons that he has here. But bringing a guy like Neighbors last year in the draft, maybe the Giants add some more strong pieces from an offensive perspective. But this is a guy in Wilson that is going to go out there and complete over 60% of his passes. And you kind of have a stable veteran floor, something they did not have last year. Like, people are like, well, the Giants just bring in these veterans. And like, yeah, I mean, Russell Wilson's here and you have Jameis Winston as well. You have guys that at least you kind of know what they are. Like if Jameis Winston is a backup, to me, is an upgrade over Drew Lock. Because while Winston will make you rip your hair out at times because he makes stupid moves throwing the ball, you at least know he has the production to get some games that you might not normally get. Russell Wilson the same way. The Giants' schedule is a lot harder this year than it was this past season, but I think they can be a 5-win team. And people will say at the same time, what is the direction the Giants are going? Because I've had this talk with a bunch of Giant fans that I know this week. They asked me my thoughts on it. And I said, I don't know what Joe Shane's going for. Are Joe Shane and Brian Dable trying to save their jobs? Or are they going for the right direction of the franchise? And you listen to Joe Shane, and there was an article I read where they had a one-on-one with him on the Giants website. And he said, you look at the pool of players that are available in different scenarios, whether it's trades, free agent signings, or the draft, the pool is going to look like you got to figure out how you can acquire the best available. Not just the quarterbacks, even some of the other signings that I felt we got targeted players that we liked and got really good value for what our projections were. You talked about Wilson. He said he's had a lot of success in the league. He's won a Super Bowl. Some of the production that he had in the field, we haven't had that position since Eli. So just fired about as a player and the person. Is Russell Wilson going to be Eli Manning? No. But at least he's won at MetLife, I think, more often than Giant quarterbacks have won at MetLife lately. And you had a player that I think still is playing with something to prove. All his players at 1-year contracts, you figured that out. So the question to me is going to be, what does that mean for the third pick? Now, I have said on this show that I think they should still take Shedeur Sanders. I know that would give them 3 quarterbacks in the room, and Tommy DeVito, remember, is still there. But I look at Wilson and Winston as potential good role models for Shedeur. I think that's a really good quarterback room to be in. The talent around Shedeur might not be great. He might be better off in a different system where there's more talent. But look at it this way. Both Wilson and Winston have gone through trials and tribulations. Winston as a top pick. Wilson, who won a Super Bowl, had a rough time in Denver. Nobody wanted him. Goes to Pittsburgh, has a decent season outside of the last few games, and kind of knows how to succeed amidst tough expectations. Wilson's also a guy mid-draft pick that kind of worked his way through and had the success that he's had. So you have those 2 guys around a kid like Shedeur who has turned around 2 programs in Jackson State and Colorado, has the leadership bravado, is the kind of player that can thrive in a media market in New York because of being around his dad. To me, that makes the most sense. And I still don't think you ignore what he can do. Now, Shane also talked about dealing with needs. And he said the only year that they didn't happen was this first year. They had to cut several players to get under the salary cap. But now we're in a situation where you go through the roster and say, okay, throughout the draft, where can we still upgrade? We're not done. We want to upgrade. We have 5 picks in the top 105. We could go anywhere. So we're not ruling any position out. When you read that quote from Joe Shane, it sounds like they'll take the best guy on the board and best guy on their board, which means, let's say Cam Ward goes number 1. The easy answer would be if the Browns take Shedeur at 2, which I don't think they're going to do, even though they need a quarterback. I think they'll take Abdul Carter out of Penn State, but let's pretend in this exercise that the Browns go out and take Shedeur. That's a perfect scenario for the Giants because now they get a blue chip player at number 3. And they don't have to, any decision they make, I think they're fine with, whether it's adding Carter to help the pass rush or adding Travis Hunter as either a number 2 wide receiver for Neighbors or a good cover corner, because even though they added Paulson Adebo, Deonte Banks is a player that people are looking for more from the Giants. And he was bad last year. You add Carter into the mix as a 2-way player, you upgrade there. If one of those 2 goes to Cleveland, now you're stuck. Do I take Shedeur for the long term? Because I think Dable and Shane are more inclined. Look, if you're bad at the end of the year, but Shedeur ends up being decent, you save your job. If you're bad and win 4 games and you don't have a rookie quarterback and you took like Jalen Milroe or Quinn Ewers in round 2, I don't know if that's really going to help you. At least maintain the stability that you're looking for. So that's where John Mara made the mistake. It was either keep these guys for a couple of years and give them the stability that they can take a quarterback and they'll be able to at least ride through that quarterback's development, or just fire them. And John Mara should have fired them. And I don't care. I don't want to hear the Arch Manning stuff. To me, the Arch Manning stuff is ridiculous. John Mara will not tank, even if it means getting another Manning in here. To me, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So overall, I think the Giants are going to make the move that's best for the organization. And if Cam Ward goes to Tennessee, which I have no reason to think he won't at this point, that's going to be interesting to see what the Giants do. I would still take Shedeur. I would take that risk because I still think you need a quarterback. But we're going to see what happens with that. Jets, on the other hand, they confirmed the owners' meetings that Darren Glenn talking about, look, this is Justin Fields' job. Jets gave him a good amount of money. Darren Mucci, the GM, said Tyrod Taylor will be right on his heels. But to me, this is Justin Fields' job. Now, it doesn't mean they won't take a quarterback in the middle of the draft. I think, to me, as we've talked about, Kyle McCord would be a good fit. But overall, I think the Jets are set with their starter for 2025, and that's a big key. And even Aaron Glenn said it. Quiet offseason is okay. They don't mind having quiet offseason because that usually will help. They've had loud offseason in the past, Aaron Rodgers, and it just has not worked. So will that happen? Will they make another big move? There's still veteran wide receivers out there. Muji even mentioned there's a possible way they can maybe restructure Alan Lazard's deal to keep him in New York. I mean, you could look and get a guy like Amari Cooper. You could look at a couple veterans that I think would help Garrett Wilson. Mujios talked about Jeremy Ruckert as being one of the better tight ends, especially if he was in this year's draft class. So what does that mean for Tyler Warren as a 7th pick? That's an option. Elijah Vera Tucker is going to be more at the guard position. Jets could use some help at the offensive line. There's that player out of Missouri that I think could be a good fit at 7. So lots going down at the owners' meetings. You have coaches talking, GMs talking. We're going to see a ruling on the tush push hopefully this week, if that still exists. Again, what I was mad about from that point was the Packers were the ones saying they shouldn't do it, but they couldn't stop it in the playoffs against the Eagles. So I dismiss anything the Packers say at that point, because to me it feels like sour grapes. But we'll see. Ultimately, so what do you think? Do you think the Giants should take a quarterback at 3, despite having 2 veterans, or should they take best player available and roll with it? Let me know here on YouTube You can tweet me again at Brigadir555 at NY State Sports IE. We'd love to hear from you. You can email me as well, rickjkeeler@gmail.com. We'll take another break. We'll come back. We'll talk some basketball, both on the pro and collegiate side. Also, an interesting event from the high school side happening in New York this week that we'll talk about. You're listening to New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We'll be right back after this.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, sports fans. It's me, your boy Larry B, and I want to walk you through the world of sports. No, not just the mainstream major TV deal type sports, although those are important too. But let me be your guide through your journey of all sports, from college to the pros, the minors, and everything in between. Each week, we are talking sports galore with true diehards just like you from a hardcore fan's perspective that's sure to quench your thirst around leagues you may know all too well and some you may even discover here. That's right, sports fans. If you love sports of all kinds, enjoy hearing amazing sports stories, and respect all sports because you know how difficult any of them can be to play or compete in, then this is your show. Join me, your boy Larry B, on the defining moment each week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports, and let the sports come to you.
Welcome back to New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all of the sports. Ricky K here with you. And real quick, want to update a couple of stories that we were talking about at the beginning of the show. We always talk about the Yankees and the use of the torpedo bats that everyone's talking about. Well, Jazz Chisholm, of course, takes to X like he usually does and tweeted, explanation, the barrel is bigger and within MLB regulation. For the idiots that say it's moved to the label, you're an idiot. Nobody's trying to get jammed. You just move the wood from the parts you don't use to the parts you do. You're welcome. No more stress for you. So again, as we mentioned, the bats are legal, and it's just again a redistribution of weight. Bats still the same. So that's Jazz being Jazz. And then at the owners' meetings, Woody Johnson speaking right now. Zach Rosenblatt from The Athletic putting out some of these awesome quotes. And Woody talked about the whole point the Jets facilities players were not happy with. He said, my first read is totally bogus. I thought this whole set, the way it was done, that's enough said on that. But we want to get better every day in every category. Relationship with the players is very, very important. We want to make sure the players are involved now, whatever they want to comment on. Our committee of players, if they like souffle or fish or steak, they should tell us. If they're bored with the food or the way the place looks, let me know. I can't do anything if you don't tell me. We're going to have a lot better communication in terms of what they're looking at every day. I was looking at the same thing every day, I might get bored too. But it's good. Our food is something I take a lot of pride in to get graded out. He also said the way they collected the information was bogus. It's supposed to be a process where we have representatives. They have representatives, so we know it's an honest survey, and that was violated. So Woody doesn't really believe that the survey is legit. Also talked about Aaron Rodgers, said the experiment was a good experiment. It just didn't work out. I have a lot of respect for Aaron Rodgers, and I'm sorry it didn't work out. We had to make a choice. And I think we made the right choice. Also said he thinks Justin Fields is going to be a total winner. So Woody Johnson gives his thoughts. Again, to me, he's trying to have a little bit of damage control here because that survey did not paint him in the light. Of course, we go off the report last year from Diane Rossini about the whole Madden ratings and things like that. Stuff just does not look good for him. But let's talk some basketball. And the Knicks getting some decent news this week. Jalen Brunson saying yesterday that he is resuming basketball activities. That does not mean he's coming back tomorrow, but of course, in your goal for the Knicks is to get Jalen Brunson back before the postseason. It sounds like that's Brunson's goal as well. He wants to play in games before the postseason. Knicks only have about 8 games left. So hopefully toward the latter strip, maybe sometime next week, we get some status on Brunson, and we'll see where that goes from there. But the Knicks are getting some really good production from OG Anunoby in his absence. In his last 10 games, OG is averaging about 24 points per game and shooting 49%. And even though the Knicks haven't played the best competition since Jalen Brunson's been out, they're still 7-5 over that stretch. That's not bad for a Knicks team that we thought was going to start going through some epic struggles without him. Last night against the Blazers, again, it's Portland, but they won 110-93. OG Anunoby had 28 points, 11 of 16 shooting. Mikal Bridges had 28 points, 12 of 22 shooting. Cat had a double-double despite only making 4 shots. Then you go to Friday. Knicks were in Milwaukee. They win 116-107. OG gets 20 points in the fourth quarter. Knicks as a whole, despite Giannis getting 30 points. Remember, no Dame Lillard for Milwaukee. And I think that's a big issue for the Bucks going forward. But Knicks get a big road win, and right now they're in a really good position. They're 4 games up on the Pacers for the 3 seed with 8 to go. So barring a major collapse, they should get the 3 seed. You look at the Knicks' last 8 games. I'll give you the schedule. They're home to Philly tomorrow, at Cleveland on Wednesday, at Atlanta Saturday, home to Phoenix on Sunday. And their final week of the year, they have Boston at home, Detroit on the road, Cleveland at home, the Nets on the road. Cleveland might not be playing for much of anything. Neither might Boston because they're locked in those top 2 seeds. I think Boston's 4.5 behind Cleveland, but I think that last Cleveland matchup, you're not going to see much of the starters for the Cavs as they get set for the playoffs. So Knicks should get that 3 seed. They'll be in a good position. They don't have any head-to-heads with Indiana coming up, so there's no way the Pacers can directly impact it. I also like the fact that you're seeing more minutes from Tyler Kolek. Now, it comes at the loss of Miles McBride. Deuce McBride's missed the last 5 games with a groin issue. Campaign has missed some time. But you look at Kolek, the former Marquette grad, he has come up and done a good job at least distributing. 32 assists over his last 5 games. He's averaging around 5-6 assists or so. And as long as Bridges is doing his thing, and Anunoby's doing his thing, Hart's doing his thing, Towns doing his thing, Knicks can be fine. And if you have now Kolek as a guy that can be that part of that second unit off the bench, do his thing in the postseason, you would sign up for that. It just adds more depth to this team at the guard position when you have him playing well. You get Payne back who's shooting threes. You get McBride in the mix, of course. But Landry Shamet had 3 threes yesterday. So that's the key over these last 8 games is can the bench step up and deliver at a high level? We'll ultimately find out. But overall, some good stuff from the Knicks. As we mentioned, if the season ended today, they would play the Bucks in round 1, and that would be a really good matchup for the Knicks. I know it's Giannis. I know it's Milwaukee. But the Knicks swept the Bucks this year. They scored 116 points in every game. So it's going to be hard to see the Bucks actually play defense against the Knicks. And who do you trust in a first-round series? Tom Thibodeau or Doc Rivers? And to me, the answer to that is going to be Tom Thibodeau. It's going to be Doc has lost big series in the past, losing the first round of the Pacers last year. I think he's on the hot seat if the Bucks don't get it around one this year, despite the Lillard injury. I mean, they still have expectations in Milwaukee to win. Bobby Portis also has been suspended, so the Bucks also lose some pieces. Again, this isn't the playoff matchup. We're kind of just going through what the possible matchups could be. The Pistons are a game and a half ahead of the Bucks for the 5, so that's why we're kind of going through. The next 3 they're going to probably play, I think it's either Detroit or Milwaukee. Indiana's a game and a half ahead of the Pistons. I would think the Pacers are going to hang on for the 4 seed. So if we're looking at it right now, New York would either host Detroit or Milwaukee in a best-of-7 first round a couple weeks from now. But we've got time to look into that. So as I said, Philly tomorrow to begin April. They are home at Cleveland Wednesday night in ESPN, at Atlanta on Saturday. Hawks trying to right now are in that, I think it's the 7th spot in the East. They're 4 games behind the Bucks, so their last chance to even make a push for the 6th seed. And they're home to Phoenix on Sunday. Suns right now a game and a half out of the 10 spot in the West. You get to the Nets, and the Nets, they tried to lose, but they don't lose as they beat the Wizards over the weekend. Drew Timme hits the game-winning shot for the Nets. Good to see Drew Timme up in the NBA. Gets called up from the G League. Of course, everybody remembers Drew Timme from Gonzaga and one of the better college players over the last 10 to 15 years. But the Wizards sat a lot of their guys in the fourth quarter. And at some point, you wonder if basketball karma hurts one of these teams at some point that tries to tank and ends up not getting the number 1 pick, which we haven't seen in the past. But that's the problem when you look at some of these games. When you go to Nets Raptors in March and nobody plays because these teams are trying to lose, that's going to hurt the NBA. We get into March and April, and everybody really cares more about the NCAA tournament, baseball starting, and you've got NBA, which is supposed to be a push for the playoffs, and that's why the play-in tournament's in there, because they want teams to compete for playoff spots. And you get matchups like this, where when you look at Nets Wizards the other night, Jalen Wilson had 20 points for the Nets, but you look at the Wizards, their best player in terms of scoring was Colby Jones, had 20 off the bench. You had one of their top picks in Sarr played 25 minutes. Carrington's only playing 22 minutes. At some point, there's got to be, and I get it, these teams want to lose. But it's kind of just ridiculous. The Nets end up hurting their chances for a top 5 pick by winning, which to me doesn't seem right. You want to see this team continue to improve, continue to develop, but that's my soapbox, at least on tanking in the NBA. Nets this week have Dallas tomorrow night, tonight actually, 8:30 tip. Dallas favored by almost 10 with Anthony Davis back. They have Minnesota at home on Thursday, and they have Toronto at home on Sunday. Nets in there with about 7 games to go. They have 5 of them at home. So it's a good sign, at least if you want to go watch the Nets. Only 2 games left against teams on the road. Big news out of the WNBA. The Liberty make a signing. It's no surprise to anybody. They bring back Breanna Stewart. That was always going to happen. And Breanna Stewart at least hopefully be ready for training camp. She had arthroscopic surgery on her right meniscus this week. But the Liberty, I think, are in a good position, especially we talked about the big trade they made with Natasha Cloud last week, adding some more defense. We'll get to the WNBA as we get closer, about a month plus out from the regular season. Drafts in a couple of weeks, but the reigning WNBA champions bringing back Breanna Stewart with Ionescu, with John Cole Jones. So the core is still there for the Liberty to make a shot at a repeat this year. Now let's talk about college. Of course, tournament's going on. We'll get into the East Regional, which was here in Newark, New Jersey, in just a little bit, but let's talk St. John's first. I think they're going to be a team in the microscope, especially with the transfer portal. Rick Pitino trying to make an impact, and it was kind of surprising news Saturday that R.J. Lewis Jr. was reported. Jonathan Gavoni from ESPN had it first, that it wasn't surprising that he's going to try to get into the NBA draft and trying to go pro. The second part was the shocking part that he's going to enter the transfer portal. Now, everyone's going to point to that news and say, well, R.J. Lewis has a problem with Rick Pitino because R.J. got benched in the second round loss to Arkansas. But here's the thing that might take away some of that. With R.J. announcing he's going to try to see what his NBA draft stock is. And in all counts, it's like a second-round pick or so. I think if he gets news that he's going to be the low end of the first round, he'll go. Rick Pitino doesn't have time to wait on RJ Lewis. The transfer portal is moving and shaking, and they're doing different things, and top guys are getting picked left and right. Rick Pitino doesn't mean he left without a chair. So if RJ decides this week, hey, I want to come back, there's still a spot. If he decides in 3 weeks he wants to come back, there's no spot available at that point because he's going to try to move pieces and get some players. And even Rick Pitino kind of talked about the quotes like, we wish RJ luck in the pros. It was kind of like, you know what? That chapter is behind us. And it's really surprising. Guy, remember, is the Big East Player of the Year, 18.7 boards, really solid player. But you have to also think back to the times that Rick Pitino got upset with RJ after the Creighton loss in December because trying to take over the game instead of going over passing for an open three, or talk about kind of the times that Pitino's ripped Lewis a little bit. It's a story with multiple layers. So if RJ Lewis goes to the portal, some top team is gonna get him. He's gonna be one of the top players out there. That's the respect people have for RJ Lewis's talent. It's just kind of sad as from a St. John's perspective that really you were kind of hoping he would try to see if he goes to the draft, but stays to play with his best friend Zuby Ejiofor and make a run at a national championship. Now that doesn't mean St. John's is going to not get anybody. They actually added a player this week, Josan Sanan. Now he is a guard from Arizona State, former 5-star recruit, averaged 11 points last year as a freshman with the Arizona State this past year. The big thing to look at with Sanan, he's a really good three-point shooter. 36% from three last year. St. John's, the goal for Rick Pitino this offseason, get guys who could shoot. Because you look at last year, they added more defense because they were scoring a lot 2 years ago and couldn't stop anybody. This past year, they were great defensively, but couldn't really be consistent with their scoring. Now they want to get a little bit of balance. So Sanan's going to help with that because you look at their three-point shooting right now, and outside of Brady Dunlap, if he comes back, of course, battling injuries last year, you don't really have a lot from a perimeter perspective. You still have Zuby, or you still have Simeon Wilcher, who I think in his junior year could really do some things, but they have to add scoring around him and maybe have it where you could play through Zuby in the paint. Sanan's going to help with that. And I think he's going to thrive. Plus, he's got multiple years of eligibility. So he could be a now piece and a future piece for Pitino in years. And even he mentioned when he decided to go to St. John's, he wanted to go and develop with Rick Pitino. Wanted to work on defense. Pitino's one of the big guys in defense. You talk about why players are going to love playing for Rick Pitino. It's the individual development sessions that they get. That's a big thing. So Sanan's going to be a good help, and there still could be more. Johnny's met with Bryce Hopkins, the former Providence star, this weekend. Hopkins, of course, has battled injuries the last 2 years, but he is the ultimate high-risk, high-reward guy. If Hopkins comes in and plays like he did 2 years ago, he could be another Big East Player of the Year candidate. He's that good. They also are meeting today with Georgia guard Silas DeMary Jr., who is a player that Pitino's been linked to. Mike Anderson tried to recruit him a couple years ago out of high school. That's a player to keep an eye on. If DeMary decides to not accept anything today, he goes to meet with UConn tomorrow. So they're going to be looking to get him in the Big East for sure. And DeMary was a guy who helped Georgia get to the NCAA tournament this year. Georgia beat St. John's this year. So Pitino, I'm sure, wanting to take from the team that beat him. But they're going to look at other guys in the portal too. The portal is constantly moving, constantly shaking. There's going to be top players that may decide this week they want to come out. There's a 30-day window going back to last week. Rick Pitino is going to make an impact in the portal one way, shape, or form. Last year, he got argued the top transfer in Kadari Richmond. Can he do it again? We'll see. What's been fun about the Big East is new coaches but familiar faces. Richard Pitino took the job at Xavier, so now Rick Pitino is going to face his son twice a year instead of last year only once when New Mexico came to the Garden. I think Pitino is going to do a good job at Xavier. And this weekend, Kevin Willard, the former Seton Hall coach, back in the Big East. Maryland loses to Florida in the Sweet 16. Kevin Willard's a little bit upset with the situation going on at Maryland. He bolts, goes to Villanova. And Villanova really needs a bounce-back season. Con Neptune doesn't make the tournament any of his 3 years. The only way Villanova is going to go back to prominence is a guy like Willard who's coaching the Big East, had some success at Seton Hall, could kind of thrive in the national program. And you look at the Big East as a whole, the coaching in this league, if it's not tops in college basketball, it's second behind the SEC. So when you get two more strong coaches and having the Patinos face each other twice next fall and next winter is going to be a lot of fun in the Big East. Couple non-St. John's notes. We have the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 in Newark in the East region. Duke ends up advancing to the Final Four. John Shire's club had a good win over Arizona, but then dominated Alabama 85-65 Saturday night, a game that started around 9 o'clock Eastern time. Duke shot 53%. Alabama only shot 35%, which is impressive from a defensive perspective for Duke. Let's remember Alabama in the Sweet 16 made an NCAA record 24 three-pointers against BYU, including 10 from Mark Sears. So everyone's going to talk about Cooper Flagg, and he's been good, but this Duke defense with Knappel and Maker down low, and they battled their own injuries. And if Duke could advance in this tournament and win the national championship, it could be one of the better Duke teams we've ever seen. This is a Final Four that also has all 4 1 seeds, first time since the last time was in San Antonio in 2008. And according to KenPom, 4 of the top 10 teams in KenPom of all time. Duke, Florida, Houston, and Auburn. This will be a fun Final Four. I know there hasn't been Cinderellas. There hasn't been a lot of buzzer beaters. There hasn't been a lot of crazy finishes. But if you have arguably the 4 best teams in the country, it's going to be good. So it's nice to see top teams in this area this week. It usually happens every couple of years. But congrats to John Shire, who is probably going to win. If it's not Pitino for Coach of the Year, it's probably Shire or Bruce Pearl at Auburn. Pat Kelsey from Louisville's already closer. Shout out to him. And another fun event going on here in New York this week. It's the McDonald's All-American Game. That's at Barclays Center Tuesday night. The top high school basketball players, girls and boys in the country. Get a chance to see some of the future stars in the NBA, future stars in college basketball next year. Karen Boozer would be one to look at. AJ Devonsa, the BYU commit. We'll see if other players decide to commit. But even though in this age where transfer portals kind of rule the day and teams look more so at the portal and getting experienced players more so than freshmen, it's always good to get the locals in this area and kind of get some national attention for these high school players. So it should be a fun event. I think it's on ESPN 2 Tuesday night. The girls game at 6:30 and the boys game shortly after. So we're sure to check both those games out this week. So we'll take one more timeout. We'll come back. We'll talk NHL. Last week and a half of the regular season. Where do the Rangers and Islanders stand in their push for the playoffs? Devils got a great game from one of their stars. And we'll talk soccer. Really, the locals left looking for answers after some disappointing performances this weekend. You're listening to New York's Day of Sports, Night Sports Radio, your direct feed for all the sports. One more commercial, and then we will be right back to wrap up episode 85 after this.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Big Mike from Indie Sports Nation. Come hang out with me each and every Friday, 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time, where we talk things Indiana sports. We talk Colts, Pacers, Fever, Indy Ignite, and we dive into the college scene as well. Boilermakers, Hoosiers, Irish, Bulldogs, and every school in between. And we don't stop there. We'll sprinkle in some NHRA and cover the IndyCar series. From the turf to the hardwood to the track, we got you covered. Come hang out with your boy, Big Mike, each and every Friday, 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Indie Sports Nation, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, guys? If you're looking for the best coverage of all Northern California sports, including 49ers, Giants, Warriors, then check out the NorCal Sports Report with yours truly, Andre Fernandez, every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We have guests every single week talking 49ers, Giants, Warriors, Sharks, San Jose Earthquakes, and a whole lot more, plus 3C2A. You do not want to miss this show. So tune in Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Pacific Time to the NorCal Sports Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Welcome back to New York State Sports and IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all the sports. Ricky K here at you as we wrap up episode 85 with a little bit of NHL and a little bit of soccer. Let's talk Rangers, who went on the West Coast. We said that the goal was to get 5 points. Ultimately, 2 wins and an overtime loss would have been ideal. The Rangers only get 3. They lose to LA, which was no surprise there. They beat San Jose Saturday night 6-1, 2 goals from Artemi Panarin. No surprise, the Rangers dominated San Jose. But the disappointing game came the night before against Anaheim, and we've seen it way too much this year. The Rangers have 2-goal leads in the third period, chance to get a big win, and end up losing in overtime. They get a point, yes, but you're missing chances for multiple points. You can't afford to do that in the playoff and down the stretch when you have 2-goal leads in the third period. It's happened time and time again. This Ranger team does know how to close. It does know how to make the plays late. The power play has been abysmal. But nevertheless, they're in the mix. They're in the mix for the playoff spot. And that's just how bad the Eastern Conference has been this season, that the Rangers have a chance. Even the Islanders have a chance to make the playoffs. And the Rangers could get some reinforcements that could really help this team. Boston College, of course, is out of the Frozen Four conversation. So it sounds like the Rangers are going to get one of their top young prospects eligible. David Pagnotta, who's at the fourth period on X, and Emily Kaplan from ESPN reported earlier this morning. It sounds like the Rangers are going to bring in Gabe Perreault. And Gabe Perreault is a player that everyone's really excited about and could be up this week. And the Rangers desperately need that inflection, that injection of youth. Pro is 19 years old, 5'11", 165 pounds, from Canada. And this is a player that can put the puck in the net. And the Rangers right now, I think, are desperately looking for that, looking for a player that could really make that impact as a playmaker. Perreault can do that. And that's really, I think, when you look at finding any opportunity you have to bring in impact talent, you do it. I know it's going to maybe mean he goes to free agency a little bit earlier, but that's an option that now is in the rear view, and they could do that. Another option here would be Drew Fortescue. Drew Fortescue is a guy that can come in, play some defense. Rangers could use that. We've seen when they played the kids do okay. Like Brendan Othman, we talked about last week, kind of disappointing. He gets on the top line, doesn't really get a chance to do anything. You look at Brett Berard, who's done some good stuff this year. Brzezinski's been good. There's been so many different players that have come. Will Coley's had a great year for the Rangers. Meanwhile, the vets have been largely disappointing. Like they're getting production from players they didn't expect. Not usually what's going to carry the day. So if you bring in a player, it's kind of like what Lisa Helen Acuna did for the Mets last year down the stretch. You bring in a player, he has a great week, that can help you going forward. Because the Rangers, their schedule down the stretch is absolutely brutal. They have 8 games left, but 6 of those games are against teams with more points than they have. This week, they have the Minnesota Wild coming up on Wednesday. That's a home game, 7 o'clock, and 7 o'clock puck drop. You have the Devils coming up Saturday at 12:30. That's an ABC game at the Prudential Center. Just 2 games for the Rangers this week. But the rest of their schedule, Lightning at home, Flyers at home, Islanders on the road, Hurricanes on the road, Panthers on the road, Lightning at home. Not an easy stretch. Rangers, as of right now, in the standings, when you look at the wild card, they are tied with the Canadiens for the final playoff spot. Ottawa looks like they're getting in. Senators have played great hockey. They're going to be the top wild card. It's really going to be between Montreal, the Rangers, Columbus, Detroit, and the Islanders. So you get 5 teams. Pittsburgh's got 71, but they're 6 points back with 7 to go. I don't really know if they're, unless Sidney Crosby goes on a tear and people continue to drop off. It's really, I think, between those 5 teams. And the Rangers have played one more game than Montreal. And we'll get into the Canadiens in a bit and why tonight's going to be very important from a Rangers perspective. But Minnesota and New Jersey this week, 2 good teams. Can the Rangers continue to get points, and can they get wins? I think wins are more important than points. If you look at the Rangers, they have the tiebreaker when it comes to regulation wins. They have 32. Nobody else has even 30 on that list. Regulation overtime wins, they have 34. Detroit has 31. The Islanders have 30. So if the Rangers get into a tie for that final spot, they'll have the edge on those categories, which is going to be big. But they need to get wins and at least get, if when you're playing like Tampa, get a result. You're playing Florida, get a result. Any kind of results they can get, they should absolutely try for right now. And they need to play their best hockey at the right time. Meanwhile, the Islanders, they are not playing their best hockey. After a stretch that got them right back into the mix, they have lost 4 straight, and their defense has let up tremendously. They have allowed a total of 20 goals in their last 4 games. They have 9 games left in the season. They're 3 points back, and like the Rangers, only 2 of them are against teams that have fewer points than they do. They do have a game with Nashville, which is going to help. But you look at the Islanders, they lost 6-4 to the Hurricanes last night, lost 5-3 to the Lightning on Saturday. It was a rough road trip for them. But more importantly, it was losing by 5-2 to Vancouver the middle of last week. That can't happen. Losing in a shootout to Columbus on last Monday in a game where the Islanders were in a good position to get a huge win, and they gave up a goal to Marchenko in the midway through the third, ended up losing that game. The Vancouver game, give up 5 goals in the final 2 periods. So the Islanders go through these stretches where their defense kind of lets up, and they let things slip away from them. Against the Lightning, you come out and you get down 4-0. Those things can't happen when you're trying to push for the playoffs. Islanders this week have the Lightning tomorrow at home. That's an ESPN Plus exclusive. They are home to Minnesota on Friday, and then they are home to the Capitals on Sunday. That's 12:30 puck drop on TNT. Alex Ovechkin, of course, is less than 5 goals away from breaking Wayne Gretzky's record. So maybe if Ovechkin has a good week, there's a chance for history at UBS this week. The Islanders actually play Washington twice at home to end the season. So playing the Capitals, now maybe Washington decides that second to last game, sit the starters. We'll see, but not a good stretch for the Islanders. And we mentioned why it's going to be interesting to watch the Canadiens tonight. Montreal, as we mentioned, tied with the Rangers, but this is the game. If Montreal loses, the Rangers get elevated to a playoff spot. They lose in regulation. Canadiens, as you mentioned, they beat the Panthers last night. It's actually not tonight. It's tomorrow night. So Rangers will be watching tomorrow night. But Canadiens are looking for a chance to sweep the Panthers in a back-to-back. They have home games. This is Montreal's schedule, so monitor them. Panthers at home tomorrow. Boston at home on Thursday. That's a rivalry game, so who knows what happens. Flyers at home Saturday, at Nashville Sunday. So very, very favorable schedule for Montreal at the end of the week. Their last 5 games, they have the Red Wings fighting for a playoff spot, Ottawa, Maple Leafs. They do have the Blackhawks, who are terrible. Sorry, Adam Karnick. And they are home to the Hurricanes to end the year. Hurricanes will probably have everything locked up by then. They'll have the 2 seed in the Metro. Can't really catch Washington, so Canadiens are going to be that interesting team that we'll see how they play down the stretch. Columbus has had its dips lately. Boston has had its dips lately. Detroit's been a mess up until recently. So who gets that last wild card, we shall see. Besides that, Devils, not much to really report on there. Nico Hischier did have a hat trick against the Wild. So strong performance out of him. Of course, New Jersey, we're just waiting to see what happens with the playoffs with them. They're probably locked into that first round matchup with Carolina once the first round gets underway. And We know about Carolina, New Jersey without Jack Hughes. We'll see what they do, but he sure puts up a strong performance. Luke Hughes had 3 assists against the Blackhawks middle of the week last week, so he had a strong performance. Devils are home to the Wild tonight, so they'll get a rematch with them at the Prudential Center, and then they're at home against the Rangers on Saturday. After that, they'll have 5 games left: Boston, Pittsburgh, Islanders, Bruins, and Red Wings. 4 of those games are at home, so a chance to see more of New Jersey down the stretch. Moving over to soccer, NYCFC, and we've mentioned this, chances for big road results, and they're not capitalizing on them. I've gone back and forth on this. They chance to beat Miami when Miami had 10 men throughout the game, end up having a tie because they gave up a goal late. They had a 0-0 game against LA. They give up a goal in the 85th minute. They lose. You're playing Atlanta. They've looked really good early. 2 goals from Hannes Wolf, a goal from Alonso Martinez. You take a 3-1 lead, and then Keaton Parks has an own goal. Atlanta scores 2 more times, and what looked like to be a great 3 points and continual progression, which is probably one of the better performances of the year, they lose 4-3, which is a very high-scoring game when you consider MLS soccer. So tough results. Ultimately, some good signs. Hannes Wolf is going to be a big key for them if they want to put up some more goals. And considering, again, you played one of your better games when opposite side and you lose, you don't like seeing that. Like, that's a game, if you got the 3 points, you would have 11. You would be 4th in the East right now. And that's, Pascal Janssen has done a good job, but when you're on the road and playing this tough schedule, you got to at least get ties. And to continue to see those results slip away is very disappointing because they could be so much better. Like, even the Columbus game, you did get a tie out of that one. Almost gave up, but if Columbus doesn't have that goal overturned by VAR, you lose that game. So want to see this team finish games. They struggled with that last year, and it seems to be a theme this season to start. Now, they do have back-to-back home games coming up, and it starts Sunday, 3 o'clock Eastern at Yankee Stadium. They'll take on Minnesota United. Minnesota, though, they're 3-2-1 on the season. They have put up results they had results in each of their 5 games this month. They had a win over Salt Lake, 2-0 on Saturday. They had ties in the 2 games prior to that, and then 1-0 wins to begin the month. So Minnesota is one of the better teams in the West, so that should be a fun matchup there. Meanwhile, the Red Bulls, and there's another thing. We talk about NYCFC not blowing big leads. You're the Red Bulls, and you go play New England, a team that Brian knows very well, doesn't know how to score. Don't lose. Well, you did. They lost 2-1. Carlos Seal had 2 goals, including a penalty shot goal in this one. Choupo-Moting had a goal for the Red Bulls late in the first half. But that's a result that can't happen. You're a veteran team. You go on the road. You got to win these games. I know it's in Gillette. I know it's a tough place to play. You can't lose. And losing to England, that a very disappointing result. Red Bulls will host Chicago coming up this weekend at 7:30 on a Season Plus. That's at Sports Illustrated Arena. Chicago is another one that had a really good March. They tied DC United, beat Dallas, beat Toronto, beat Vancouver, and tied Montreal. So Chicago has been putting up some good results down the stretch for them. Player to keep in mind, Chicago, they got a goal in the opening minute, by the way, a couple weeks ago against Vancouver. So they're a team that can start fast. That should be a fun one. Red Bulls are the favorite, but look at the table right now in the East. The Red Bulls are 9th with 8 points. NYCFC is also tied with 8 points. To put some context, Chicago is 4th in the East with 11. Minnesota 4th in the West with 11 right now. So tough matchups coming up for both these teams, but they are at home, so a chance to get some wins. And a team looking for their first win still is Gotham FC. They come up short against Houston. They get a 0-0 draw on last Friday. They will have off until April 13th when they play North Carolina. That's a 4 o'clock game on Paramount Plus. But again, you look at a Gotham team that came up a good run last year. I know they're injured a little bit, but no results in their first 3 games. They're going to need to get something happen there to be successful. And last but not least, we had to talk some college hockey. Frozen Four, Cornell coming up short in their Elite 8 matchup against Boston University. So Cornell is out. been a good run from them. The women's hockey team had a good run as well. But shout outs to Cornell for a strong season. So as we wrap up episode 85, good week for the locals, at least for the Yankees, and controversy will consider, well, not controversy, but the talk of baseball is going to be torpedo bats and all those things. But nevertheless, 36 runs, 15 home runs. Aaron Judge is heating up, and the Yankees have a couple tough series this week at home. They're facing the top three in Arizona's rotation. I wouldn't expect them to score 36 runs again, but hopefully they can go out and take 2 out of 3 and then head to Pittsburgh. Even though Ralph said they'll miss Paul Skeens, but we'll see what happens. Mets, they will head home after this weekend to Miami. Chance to see Peterson and Senga. Maybe the Mets offense breaks out a little bit. We shall see. We're about 3 weeks away from the draft. We'll get some more draft rumors for next week's show. Maybe we'll do a mock draft next week if we don't have any other big storylines to talk about. We'll do some of that. Knicks gearing up for a postseason push. We'll see what the latest comes from Jalen Brunson. Rangers and Islanders will try to get some stuff done as well for the NHL. Again, keep an eye on the Montreal Canadiens. That team's going to be the one that keeps the Rangers and Islanders out, I think, although Columbus is in the mix and Detroit's in the mix. What goes on in the transfer portal? What goes on at the Final Four? We'll dive into all that stuff next week. Thanks to all those who tuned in this week. And I want to remind you can follow me on X at Nader555. You can follow the show at NY State Sports IE. It'll be a fun one. It'll be a fun week, but a fun Monday here on the IE Sports Radio. We got Chi-Town Weekly on Carnick. We have Carolina Sports Update. This is KC, Set Point. So much going on Monday. It's always a lot of fun here on the network. Terrence commented in. Thanks, Terrence, for the thoughts. And Timmy, fun player from the Saga. So sure to follow all those people. So from all of us here at IE Sports Radio, for Larry B and the entire team, Ricky K, have a great start to your week. Enjoy all the sports this week. See you back here next week for our first show in April.